And welcome back to Game Escape. Here today with a kind of news roundup video. The Week 1 battle between the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One. And they've both had a week here on the retail market in North America. They have each sold about 1 million consoles, although Sony's numbers will, I'm sure, slowly tick up once they start reporting the international sales, whereas the Xbox had a global release last Friday. But nonetheless, I always think after the first week that a product is on the market, you can actually look at it and glean some fairly useful information. So I just want to say, right off the bat, that what I'm not doing is offering a review. I own the PS4. I don't own the Xbox One, but this is a news roundup. This is just kind of an overview of some of the comments and articles and analyses that I've read and that I've followed over the past 2 weeks, and just kind of an attempt to look at where the systems are now and where they could possibly be going. So I think I'll start off with design. It seems to be fairly split here. I think there are some people who really like the design of both consoles and some people who have some reservations. I know in particular the Xbox One was criticized for looking like a 1980s hi-fi VCR. We saw that in a lot of different reviews. I don't know that that's a bad thing. I mean, the sort of high-end VCRs, particularly the Sony VCRs back in the day, I actually thought looked pretty good. So it's a matter of opinion. I know in my PS4 impressions video, I said I like the design, but I didn't like the placement of the CD or the Blu-ray slot. It's kind of hard to find, particularly in a low-lit room. But I think in both cases, they're going to slot in under your television. You're going to put them in your entertainment center, and they won't command the room in any sort of significant way. I mean, they'll be tucked away and enjoyed. So I think it's pretty much a draw there, although I know some people have commented that the Xbox went with the huge external power brick again. I'm of the mind where, hey, that's behind the entertainment center. It's not a huge issue. The press on the controllers has been, I think, universally positive for Sony. They really, whereas the Xbox, a lot of reviewers said, well, it's a very iterative design. I think Sony really came out and made extremely significant improvements on the PS4 controller. I know you can check out my video. I did a review versus video, DualShock 4 versus the Wii U Pro controller, and I kind of echoed those sentiments. The Sony PS4 controller is really, really good. A lot of praise for the Xbox controller as well, although some people have really come down pretty negatively on the placement of the bumpers. And a couple people also mentioned that they weren't as crazy about the triggers. Again, I haven't used it, but just going by the commentary on the internet, I think we can fairly say that the Sony DualShock 4 has kind of won that early battle. Reliability. Both consoles have had some fairly significant issues. We had the blue light of death and maybe some red lights of death out there as well. From the PS4, Sony came out and said it was only affecting 1% of the units shipped, and presumably they're working with customers on a solution to that, on I think they have an advanced return policy, which is nice. Xbox has had the disk drive issue, and that was highlighted on most of the major outlets. I know Joystick and Kotaku posted, there was like a medley video out there of all the people who had posted YouTube complaints about the Xbox One disk drive. I know Microsoft, similar to Sony, came out and said, it's only affecting a very, very small number of people. And I like what they did. They actually gave people affected by the issue a free game, a download code, so they could actually play on their current system while the new one was being shipped out. The user interface, I think here we have a point of differentiation, and that's what, a discussion like this is trying to bring out. I'm not here trying to say, well, after a week we can tell one is better than the other, but this is kind of the first point of differentiation. The Xbox user interface has been described as feature-filled but kind of bloated and somewhat difficult to navigate, whereas the PlayStation 4 has gotten a lot of, I think, fairly positive press for being very quick and easy and games focused. And I know that's really what I enjoyed most about my PlayStation 4 is that, you can really just turn it on, get into a game. I think what both operating systems are doing nicely is they're kind of hiding all of the updating and downloading necessary, and they're sort of allowing you to focus on just enjoying content on both systems. They each have a low power state where they'll do all of that stuff in the background, updating games, updating the firmware, and you just turn it on and you play. That's a really, really nice addition. I know people on the Xbox were complaining that, well, it's hard to determine exactly how much memory you have left in your hard drive. There is no storage space indicator, which is troubling again, but both systems are going to try to manage it in such a way that your released used games you can simply delete, and if you want to play them again, you can download them and start playing within the first couple of minutes. Both systems allow you to start playing a game while it's downloading and being installed, which is another nice feature. Obviously, the Xbox One UI is, driven by the television connectivity and then also the Kinect sensor. I'll get to that in a little bit. I guess the only complaint with the Kinect sensor is that it requires very, very specific commands. It doesn't sort of respond to natural language in the same way that Siri does or attempts to do. Sony has voice commands as well. I've tried them out. They're very limited. I don't have the camera, but if you plug in a microphone, you can sort of navigate your way around the system. As far as visuals and graphical prowess are concerned, I think the consensus seems to be that games look better and run better on the PlayStation 4. We have, the examples of Call of Duty Ghosts, 1080p on the PlayStation 4, 720p on the Xbox, even some exclusives. I think Dead Rising is 720. I'm not certain about Madden and NBA 2K14, but typically as you sort of drill down the list of games and look at what people have to say, the PlayStation 4 comes out slightly ahead in that category, and we'll see if that's a lead that can be maintained. To my knowledge, no one has in any way evaluated exactly how the sort of offloading of processing tasks to the cloud on the Xbox One has affected visual fidelity. If you've seen that, put that in a comment below. The only, I think, reference to that I've seen was its functionality in Forza, which has been actually pretty positive. The Drivatar system, people kind of canned it at the beginning, but it actually seems pretty cool that the system will sort of analyze your driving style and then upload your avatar into the cloud and have it compete against other players, and you actually reap the rewards of its competition. I guess you're getting money or experience or something. But beyond that, I'm not really sure how the cloud is affecting the visual quality of games on the Xbox One. If we focus on the overall quality of games, I would say that probably Forza has gotten the best press. I mean, I think Microsoft, and again, I haven't played it, I've seen some gameplay of it, and it seems like that is the best first-party game out there. I know that I was not Killzone. I was not thrilled with Killzone. on the PS4. It looks gorgeous. It's it's got some gorgeous sequences, particularly flying over Vectin City, as I mentioned in my impressions video, was really, really cool. But I think the pacing is kind of poor, and it just, to me, it gets very repetitive. So I'm not, it seems like Forza has that incredibly high level of graphical polish and seems to be pretty fun to play. Rise, another gorgeous game. It seems very repetitive and seems to be like a series of QuickTime events, and it kind of got panned because of that. That I think if you compare that to something like Knack, which was also pretty much canned, so that's a draw there. And yeah, I mean, I think if you include Resogun in those initial PS4 releases, Resogun's probably the best game for the PS4. It is just a ton of fun, but I think the combination of Forza, Dead Rising, and Rise gives Microsoft a slight lead, but to be honest, it's a pretty anemic launch lineup. I haven't been really thrilled to death with, like I said, Killzone. I also picked up Need for Speed Rivals, which it's a cool idea, this concept of going onto a map with 6 other players, some of whom are the bandits, some of whom are the cops, and then just trying to battle it out amongst yourselves, but also against the AI. I think in practice, really with that game, you're just doing a lot of driving around looking for these other players. I mean, you're not really engaging with them all the time, so that was sort of a disappointment. The sports games, I've actually put a lot of time into Madden and NBA 2K14. In the case of the latter, just trying to learn all of the mechanics. In the case of the former, it was just a kind of a fun, familiar game. But again, these aren't reasons to go out and buy either system. So I think in that respect, pretty disappointing with what's out there as far as launch games. So I think the major point of differentiation between both systems seems to be the bundle of services around the core gaming component. And it's very interesting. I think these are two fundamentally different approaches which are being carried out on very similar sets of hardware. As far as Sony goes, I think they need to be praised for enabling the broadcasting functionality right out of the bag. It's really, really fun. It's very clean. The Twitch broadcasting, just very sleek and well integrated into the console. I think Microsoft really dropped the ball by not having that switched on at launch. I think Sony's long-term strategy here is going to be to continue catering to gamers. I think they're going to do that through improving PS Plus further. I think it's great as it stands. So many free games to play, but I think that's going to be a selling point. They're going to play, in my opinion, they're going to probably play catch up on media content. As Microsoft builds out all the different kinds of content you can consume on the Xbox One, I think Sony's always going to play catch up. I don't know that bothers them, but depending on Microsoft's success in that space, I mean, it may actually start to bother Sony if Microsoft starts realizing some serious profit there. Then, of course, we have the question mark, which is Gaikai. I think this is the unknown quantity that's going to make or break this part of the competition for Sony. Is what is Gaikai going to actually deliver? How well is it going to stream PlayStation 3 games? And is that the only thing it's going to do? Because, I have 2 PlayStation 3s at home. I love the system, and I'm perfectly cool with, for the foreseeable future, just popping in the discs and playing. Is Gaikai going to add some functionality to these PS3 titles? Is it going to be quicker to launch, quicker to get into, perhaps? What else is it going to do? I think that's the interesting question. So it's very hard to answer because we haven't really seen really much of Gaikai since it was initially announced back at Sony's press conference at last February. Microsoft, this is really where it really gets interesting, and this is what I'm very, very eager to see. I'm actually of the opinion, even though I didn't purchase an Xbox One and probably won't until Titanfall comes out, I see a lot of potential in their push into the living room. I know they were panned for it. I think a lot of hardcore gamers are still really negative on that, but, for me, I just see them going in a lot of interesting directions. I think the caveat here is I'm going to discuss a few aspects that they can really win at, but they need to, I think, really refine the UI and the Kinect experience based on what people are saying. If you can make the language that you have to use with Kinect a little bit less robotic, I think they're going to be onto something. And they can do this by, I think, capturing two very, very disparate audiences. If, after they refine the Xbox One for a year or two, they have a product that's very easy to use, that controls everything in your entertainment center, I think they could actually appeal to the older, retiring baby boomer crowd who are, in my experience, very intimidated by modern television equipment. They love TV. They watch TV all the time, and this is based on, my parents and other people of that generation with whom I'm friendly. I think they would be very, very interested in a device that automates things like finding the right input, recording, finding shows, using the TV guide functionality. And I think this is overlooked by the gamers that sort of pan Microsoft, is that, I think, at least in the example of my parents, they don't know how to use the cable box. They know that they want to watch something. I mean, they're writing down channels on an index card because they don't know how to use the guide effectively all the time. And I think if Microsoft makes it elegant and easy to use the Xbox One, that really could work with that crowd. I think the second point that I really see happening is, I remember reading an article a while back. Now, this might have been something that Michael Pachter said. Obviously, take that with a grain of salt, but I think there's something to it. He was arguing that at a certain point, and he made this point with reference to the 360, but that Microsoft was apparently in talks with cable providers to actually provide cable service via the Xbox platform. Now, just think about that for a minute. If Microsoft worked with cable providers and said to them, hey, we've got this box. People love the way it refines the process of watching television. They love the service that we're providing. Let's come up with a couple bundle deals that we can offer exclusively through Xbox. I think they have the potential of winning back some of the cable cutters who, and I myself am included in this, who just drop cable because it's no longer interesting, because you're paying for a bundle of channels that you don't care about. I think if Microsoft says, hey, look, you're losing a ton of business because of this, it's a trend that's only going to get worse. Here we have a gaming product that this demographic is interested in. If we offer them a little bit more flexibility with the cable programming that they want, we might be able to win them back. And for instance, I take my situation. I like watching sports on television. There's probably 10 or 15 channels that I would be interested in having. If Microsoft came out and said, hey, we're working with your local cable providers, and you can get your local channels, some of your news channels and ESPN, your local sports channels for $30 or $40 a month, I would do it. I would definitely consider the television functionality of the Xbox One, because that would be a service that I would use. I don't want 100 channels. I don't want the military channel and the Fashion Channel or whatever the hell people are watching. I just want to consume the content that interests me, and cable is currently a service that does not allow me to do that. If Microsoft builds an install base and builds, a fan base for this kind of functionality that the Xbox One is offering, I think they can either partner with cable companies and try to win back the audience that cable companies have lost, or they could perhaps go it alone and say, hey, we're going to make a deal with, one service provider and allow anyone in the country to sign up for, Xbox Live TV and get a bundle of programming that way. I think they can take it, in both directions, and it would be fascinating to see them do that. I think if they do that, the adoption rate of the Xbox One would go through the roof, because, I'll purchase one anyway, but I think if you make that value proposition to a family or to someone who's not really into games but, would appreciate having the ability to play all of the new games that are coming out, all the big franchises with, very, very good visual fidelity, and to give them all of the entertainment they want in a manner that gives them more choice and more control over that content, Xbox could really take off. Now, I know there's a lot of ifs there, but I think it's something to consider, and I think it is a major point of difference between these consoles, and I think it's something that will play into the overall battle between Sony and Microsoft. Now, for me personally, the PS4 as a gamer is the console of choice because it is so focused on games, but I don't think that alone is going to win the battle. I think both companies have realized that it's not going to be so much about the hardware or even the games. It's going to be about the services bundled around that. And I think Microsoft has a slight lead, even though that pains me to say it, because, it's nothing that I'm interested in, and their initial start with the press conference in May and E3 was absolutely horrendous. One of the worst examples of corporate messaging perhaps in the history of American business. Nonetheless, I think they do have the technology there to really change how media is consumed in the living room. And I hope that they take that path, and that they start challenging the cable distribution model and being that sort of disruptive force in that industry. I think, however, if it just stays the way it is today, hey, plug in your cable box and you can control TV with your voice and your Kinect, it's not going to make that much of a difference, but I think you have to recognize that potential. So, first week down, it's been exciting, it's been fun to follow, and I'm really looking forward to see how both consoles change over their life cycles. So I thank you as always for watching Game Escape, and I'll be back shortly with a new video.